Let me know if you have any specific questions regarding this practical that we can deal with in the beginning, because I think that it'll be really important to just try and deal with that right at the start, like once off the bat, you know. If you guys have any questions, because I mean, you guys did bother to wake up early on a Saturday and attend, so I think it's really if you guys have any questions, you're more than welcome to ask me. Like right now, just before we start actually going into it. And all right, so let's go look at the chat. There seems to be some stuff here. Please go through the calculations. I really struggle with the calculations. All right, fair enough. I'll definitely try and emphasize how to think about these calculations, just so that everybody can be on the same page with those. And validation too. All right, validation can be done in a number of ways, right? So it's all about the programmer's style and his or her method of doing things. So validation, I'm going to show you how I do it, and hopefully maybe you can take something away from it if you want, if you like it, or you can look at how Mr. Van says and does it in the tuts, or how Mr. Cottrell does it in the tuts. So essentially, you can take from that, as long as you ensure that the input that you get is coming through correctly, right? That's the point of validation, is to show that the data that comes to your class is good, and that it's being used in the correct way, right? So validation, I'll try and explain why we do validation, and as well as how to go about thinking of validation, I assume. But that's just from my opinion on that part. So validation, you guys can essentially do it your own way, as long as you achieve the goal, which is to ensure that the information that's coming through to your class is error free and is not going to cause a problem to your class. Okay, cool. So with emphasis on calculations and validation. All right, so I'm gonna switch over to the actual practical. And hopefully we can get an understanding of what we need to do. Just, do you guys see that? It should be like screenception happening on your screen now. There should be 1,000 like little screens here. Please just like raise a hand if you can see that. All right, cool. There we go. Okay, so let's just take a look at this practical, right? So you have been approached by a course evaluation committee. The committee reviews newly designed courses to determine what NQF level the course should be and if the information provided is correct. Right, so that's one thing that that you need to see here, right? So you're actually checking if the information provided is correct, right? They've recently been overwhelmed with new courses and need to speed up the process. They have asked you to help them to develop an application that would make the review process faster by determining what level the course is done currently at and if it satisfies what the course claims to be. The committee has given you the following description. Okay, given. I assume this is supposed to be given. Small typo there. Has given you the following description of information. They need a Mac. They need for a course to review it. The course must have a name. Okay, so that's one piece of data, that a course that belongs to a course. Then we've got a code, and then that also belongs to a course. The code must be not longer than 10 characters, and the characters can be anything. It can be from numbers to strings, right? But it cannot be special characters, right? That's what alphanumerical means. It means it must be either a number or a letter, right? The course also needs a suggested NQF level. Okay, so use subject has a name, code, and number, and NQF credits that as well. Our application is essentially going to do very small thing where we're just gonna essentially total up all of the NQF credits per course and essentially just divide it, right? No, sometimes you don't even divide it, you just total it. Let's calculate and display the NQF level of the course using the following table as a guide, right? Your application must also determine whether the provided suggested NQF level from the user is a correct level. The suggested level is correct provided the user with a comment saying the course information is correct. Please excuse my English there. This is a really long sentence. But essentially, you just have to tell the user that the information is correct if the information is indeed correct, right? So otherwise, inform the user that the information needs to be updated. So with this, right, with this whole calculation here, some people did an average, some people did a total, a lot of people were confused. From what I can see here, your application must be calculated by summing up the credits, right? It looks like a total to me, right? It definitely looks like a total to me. So we're gonna move on the assumption that it's just a total. We're not gonna assume that it's a average because that doesn't sound correct to me. There's nothing here about you dividing anything. It's just you adding all of them up, and that's going to either be it's going to be 120 and above, or it's going to be 360 and above, or it's going to be 480 and above. Right. So that's essentially how I thought of this. Now let's try and do a quick practical, right? As a quick UML. I use Lucidchart. You guys can use whatever software you guys want to do UML. Dia is a good option. There's stuff that's provided by the Academy for free. You just have to ask your lecturer. Figure out where to log in here. Okay. I'm logging in there. It's going to be documents. Alright, database you're currently free account, try for paid account for free. So this is a limited software. Not a fan of paying for stuff. So what I do is I try not to pay for stuff. So if you guys want to use Sol or something like that for next week, and you want to see a UML doing that, then we can do that. So just let me know what kind of software you guys are more interested to do, then we will do that. Right. Okay, so that's a nice little class thing that they give you, which makes life a lot easier for everybody. So obviously one of the classes we're going to have here is courses, right? Each course has a couple things. What does each course have? Well, we know that it has to have a name, which is a string. It has to have a code, also a string. It has to have a suggested NQF. And that is going to be, well, it seems like it's going to be integer for now. So let's make it integer. Remember, this is the design process. So this is me spitballing. If I find that it needs to be a double later on, I'm more than welcome to come back and change this. It shouldn't be causing me a problem. Right? Suggested NQF. What else do you think might go into a course? I think we can consider some stuff there, but I do know a couple of things that need to be in the methods as well. We're thinking about that, right? So first, we're gonna do the constructor, right? Constructor. Right, today we might go a little bit over time, so if you guys have a messed up, please let me know, or if you have another class after this, let me know. I'll try and hurry it up a bit. But I want to try and explain this a bit slowly because I know a lot of people are still struggling with UML. And if you do a good UML, essentially you'll be done with a lot of these practicals a lot faster. You'll be done with you'll be doing them without a lot of errors. So I feel like the design process is really important. Particularly because it allows you to model your problem and your solution around the problem. So it shows you whether you understand the problem well enough to actually code it. A lot of people who gave me some pretty interesting solutions that weren't necessarily actual solutions, right? That's the biggest thing there. I do see. I think that was a question. Let's just see. Object subject under course. Yeah, so I'll get to that now because that's a part of composition, right? That's a really important topic to talk about quickly when we're doing your composition and aggregation, right? So when something is a relationship, right? It's a different kind of relationship compared to a has a relationship. Like a course has a subject, right? So that's how you know this has to be either composition or aggregation. And the fact that the course, if the course stops existing, the subjects related to that course don't need to exist anymore, means that the course controls the life cycle of the subjects that's enclosed in it, right? That means it's going to be a strong relationship, so we can say it's definitely going to be composition. But I'll deal with that now. Let's get the constructor out of the way, right? So a lot of people put new here. That's technically not the correct way to name a constructor. Your constructor should be named after your class, right? And you can put some stuff in here. Essentially, these are going to be parameters. So when you want to add, when there's some kind of array in here, and you want to have, like, let's say subs, right, as integer, and that's part of the parameter list, right? That's really okay. Let's see this question. Or not. I was implying you should also include in your UML. Yeah, I will. I'm going to include in the UML, but once I have the other class, we can figure out the relationship by looking at both classes, right? So there's something that I'd like to try and teach you guys early on. Right now, the relationships between between a course and a subject sound really definitive, and they're easy to spot, right? It's easy to say, well, of course there's subjects in a course, right? But there's certain times where you'll get practicals where it's not such a clear-cut line, and I'm going to try and show you guys how to decide which one should essentially be inside which one, and how to know when they definitely should be inside each other instead of inheriting from each other or something like that, right? So you guys probably haven't learned inheritance yet, but it's very difficult to differentiate between them if you really understand those concepts. So this is going to be a void, right? Because constructors don't have a return type. That's how I'd imagine my constructor right now, and that's integer. This is a weird spelling of integer, my bad. And then we're gonna have property, right? So you can have property methods or properties or whatever the case might be. I'm just gonna go short and sweet here. Is like try and use the most amount of words you can. The more you describe stuff in your design, the better it is for everybody, right? We're gonna need one for name, which is gonna be name. And it's gonna give us a name, and then we're gonna have. Notice that these are actual public things because they've been called outside the class, right? When you see that this needs to be called outside the class, you know where to put it in. You know that it needs to be in your class, but it needs to be detailed with the public modifier, right? And that's also another thing a lot of people seem to be struggling with. I know I got a lot of questions based on where do I put which function, right? So remember when you're modeling a course, the stuff that has to do with the course's data needs to go into this course, right? So stuff that needs to relate to the NQF for the course, stuff that's related to the code for the course, stuff that's related to the name for the course, right? Those are all important things for the course, and they should be in the course's class, because that's essentially where they belong. It's weird to calculate the course's stuff inside the form. That's not where they belong. Why would you do that if you have a class for the course's stuff, right? Now why do I have name up there? That's a weird one. I've been talking too much and not concentrating. Right? Here with regards to capitals and small, just keep it consistent. So if you start off capitalizing every word, then capitalize every word the whole way through. That's your essentially your thing. Right? That's gonna be right. So those are the property methods for now. The other thing we'll have is methods, right? I think that was another question here. Is code an array? No, code is not an array. Code is, well, take an array of characters, but right now it's a string, right? So the reason code has this is because you can send a string and set code, or you can get a code and it'll give you a string, right? That's what this side means. It means the property can return a string and it can accept a string, right? In the parameters. The property methods are a little bit weird to understand like that, but essentially it means that you can set the code, with value as string, and then you just say code equals value. That's essentially you setting code from the parameters, or you can return it and you can say in your code somewhere, my display the subject.code, right? And it will return a string. That's how property methods work, right? So one of these is going to be the total method that I like to do. Is well, the total method we can deal with, but the one that we really need is calculate NQF, right? And this is going to be, it's going to have no parameters, and it's going to return an integer, right? I think that's all we need to really return there. Is that the only way to write it? No, there are other ways to write property methods, I think, but this is the way I do it. I'm not quite sure if there's how Mr. van der Westhuizen wants it. You should definitely ask him. Mr. van der Westhuizen and Mr. Cottrell will definitely give you the best kind of answer there as to how to do it properly. For this subject, I know for ComSci it changes. So in ComSci you'll indicate arrays differently as you would in informatics. I know it also changes for informatics 3 as well as for honors, so it keeps changing. So you should definitely ask the lecturer. All right. Back to this. All right, so now you guys can kind of see that this is the only method I have here, calculating QF. To do that quickly, we're just gonna put generic total function. But no, this is a waste of time if we have a generic total function, because this is a generic total function. So now we need to copy this, and I'm copying and pasting because I am lazy, right? You didn't copy and paste. The design process should be you thinking about it. So subject has a name, a code, and an NQF, right? The constructor is going to be called subjects. the name, code, and in here. Let's put these. And here we don't need those calculates in here at the bottom of subject, right? That's not necessary. All right, now we have these two classes. Let's consider their relationship, right? So, like I said, the ISA has a kind of comparison test is a really good test to consider when you're trying to decide what kind of relationship your classes should have. And sometimes even your calculations don't really tell you what kind of order your classes should be in, or which one should be enclosed by the other one. So the ISA has a kind of logic test, as I call it. It's not really a 100% like a real thing. I don't know. I know I use it. I'm not sure if other people use it. Does subject class need a constructor? Yes. I'd put the constructor down just as a thing so that they know that you know that there's a default constructor. All right, so like essentially, if I think about it like this, right? The fact that you know that there's some constructor here tells me that you understand the way you're coding. So that's something I want to see in informatics one. Later on, when you're a big, strong coding man or woman or light pole, whatever the case might be, you're more than welcome to leave that out if the lecturer says so, right? It's the same as if you go to work at a company. Wherever you go and work, you will need to adhere to their rules. So if they don't show getters and setters like property functions, or if they don't show constructors or whatever the case might be, that's totally the way that they do things, right? So it's important that you do things the way that they expect you to do it, right? You should be able to adapt to that. So UML will change depending on well, there's obviously a definitely right way to do UML, and there's things like pros, feats, and stuff like that. Is void always in the constructor? Yes, constructors do not return in time, right? So what is a constructor actually, right? Does somebody want to try and explain to me what a constructor is? Let's see what you guys think a constructor is. Chances are you're not 100% wrong, but I'll try and explain it in a little bit of a nice manner. But first, before we go, so think about that while I show you guys how to consider which one should be inside where, right? So let's assume that we put a course inside a subject, right? We know that with the thing we're calculating is the NQF for the course, and it's calculated by summing up the subjects that belong to a course. And when I see the words belong to a course, I know that there has a relationship, right? So I know that this course has some subject that it owns. Okay, when it owns a subject, we can just essentially do arrow here, and then we'll just change the arrowhead back, right? Now the empty diamond represents aggregation, as far as I remember. If I'm wrong, please correct me. A constructor is instantiation of an object in a class. That's a really good theory answer, but what is it actually doing? If somebody can tell me what a constructor really does in code, then I'll be really impressed today. I don't expect you guys to know, but it would be great if one of you guys did know, right? So now that we know that this thing is on this side, right, and we know that the subject belongs to the course, subject array here, right? Some people put an array like this in informatics. I know some comp sci students go one dot star here, right? This is just an indication of a dynamic array. As long as you can explain your naming convention, you should get marked correctly. But it's safer to ask the lecturer which one he wants you to do, right? That is my as long as you're consistent and you do what the lecturer wants, then you should be fine, right? And ta-da, we have now got an array for subject, but that means we need a property method for subjects. I'm gonna say I notice this one here is index as an integer, right? That's what it takes in. So it takes index as an integer in, and it returns a integer. Or it returns a subject. right? Does return a subject. Does this sound 100% correct? This whole subject, index, integer, and subject. Is that correctly describing what's actually happening there? Okay, let's see what we got here. We got is constructor is an instantiation of an object. We discussed that one, and then you got a constructor creates an object of the class. It creates an object, basically creating an object of the class. Well, you guys are pretty much correct there. But I'm going to explain it in a little bit more technical detail now, just so you guys kind of get an idea of why it's so important to know. But also with this here, nobody's going to blame you if, for example, you then say it also takes in value, which is a, I don't know, subject, right? Because you might be able to set a subject here, which is a terrible way of doing things, but let's just model like that for now. If you do this, and it could be considered correct depending on how you structure your getters and setters. So it's really important that this is unique to how you do your program, right? It's also really important that you understand that this relationship is generally what we wanted to see, as well as the difference between your constructor, your property methods, and your methods, right? So we need to see that you understood that a constructor has the name of the class in both subjects. We need to know that you guys create public properties for each of the class variables. And we need to see that you could create the incf, like calculate the incf method here, right? So this is the one of the best ways to model a system. It's just a simple URL, so a simple UML, right? Now let's talk a bit about constructors, right? So what does a constructor do, right? When I create a class of my own, right? When I create subject here, right? It has name, it has code, it has in here, right? But what the computer actually sees in here is a, let me just go see if somebody has a question. Why are constructors of those classes not the same? Okay, let me try and explain to you what a constructor does, and maybe you can tell me why they're not the same, right? So let's assume that so when I create a subject and I put information in it, right? This has to fit somewhere in memory, right? The idea of what a subject is, it needs to go somewhere in memory, right? But the computer knows how to make memory for a string, right? It knows how to make memory for code. It knows how to make memory for an NQF integer. That it understands how to do those things because those are taught to it. It knows what a string is. It knows what a integer is. It knows what a boolean is. It knows those kind of things. It doesn't know what a subject is, right? So how can I kind of explain this to you? Let's imagine that every single class you create is every single data type that you know of that's basic, right? That comes off without you creating a class. Let's call those fruits, right? So obviously, let's say strings can be bananas and integers can be oranges, and something else can be apples, right? As you can see, each class has a different amount of apples and bananas and stuff, right? So when I make a class, you can call it a bag of fruit, right? But nobody knows how big this bag is, essentially, right? When I say I want a bag of fruit from you, you don't know how many bananas there should be in there. You don't know how many oranges are going to be in there. You don't know how many apples are going to be in there. All you know is I want a bag of fruit, and I could want a bag the size of a truck, or I could want a bag the size of, I don't know, like that fits in your palm, right? So it's really important if I want to store this bag of fruit in my house, I need to know the size of the bag of fruit, right? So you need to tell me it has 18 bananas in it, it has 5 apples, and it has 5 oranges, right? And I know, oh, okay, it's going to probably be about a 5 kg bag. I can assume it's about a 5 kg bag. And I can just kind of put it on my fruit basket, or my fruit or vegetable rack, right? That's where I can put it and it will survive there. Conversely, if you tell me it's like 200 bananas, 200 oranges, 200 pears, and 200 apples, and that can't fit on my vegetable fruit rack, it's essentially going to have to go in the pantry or somewhere else where I can store a large amount of fruit. Because this is now moved from like a 5 kg to nearly a 20 kg of fruit. And that's a different problem, right? But now what you're doing is, this is a bag of fruit, this subject, right? And inside here, inside this bag of fruit, you've got this bag of fruit, right? You understand? So this is a different bag of fruit. So when I create so what a constructor does is a constructor tells the computer how much space on its fruit and vegetable shelf it needs to create, right? It tells us the size of the bag. Okay, it tells us how many strings are in there, how many integers are in there, how many other stuff that it already knows is in there, right? And that's why it complains if you try and declare a subject when there's no subject, right? Because it doesn't know what a subject is. You can't allocate space for a subject because you've never declared a subject before, right? That's one of the things a constructor does. So the default constructor automatically knows to create space for name according in here, right? The reason you can't rely on a default constructor for a case where you have an array is because the array often needs to be resized to a specific number. The default constructor is not going to know which number to create. It's not going to know how many bags of subject, fruit bags it's going to have, right? You know how many bags of subject fruit bags are going to fit into this one big bag of course, right? That's essentially a really important fact here. So that's why this is a non-standard constructor, and this is can be considered the standard constructor, right? So I'm hoping that kind of helps you understand what constructors do, and understanding why what the constructors do in each subject. You should understand why they're not the same, right? If you don't, please let me know like as soon as possible. The quicker you let me know, the better for everybody. Yes, please talk to me. I see I handed.
So why did you make the class to be the constructor to be void?
Well, essentially the constructor doesn't return anything, right? When I create a constructor in code, you'll see that it doesn't return any information to the user. It's not a function, right? It's just a constructor. So if it doesn't return anything, the type of the value that it returns is actually going to be null or void. That's why I call it a void. Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes sense. Thank you.
All right, cool. So a constructor is similar to an array as it has similarities to an array, like creating memory and size. I'm not 100% sure what you mean. You wanna unmute your mic and kind of explain what you're trying to say there?
Okay. Good morning, sir. So
Morning.
my answer is I'm saying the constructor is similar to an array. Like for instance, a constructor, because with an array you have to have a memory and size, right? Like a certain because for a bag of maybe potatoes or whatsoever, the set it has to have the size. You are reserving a size and
Yes.
memory. Yeah, so that was what I'm trying to imply. That in a constructor itself, it's an object where that you have to create or reserve memory and space.
Yes, actually, it's a really good way of thinking about it. It's a good connection to make. I'm gonna just quickly elaborate a little bit on that for those people who didn't quite catch that, right? So if we look at subject and we look at course, we know that somewhere in memory, like you said, that before you can use an array, you have to tell it how big it is, right? It has to know how much space to have for the array. The same thing for subject, and the reason behind that is in memory, when you call the constructor for subject, or you call the constructor for a course, right? What it does is it takes a little block of memory and it calls this one course one, right? And as long as course one exists in memory, the computer can refer to this and get out the values for name and code that are inside here, right? Those are stored in memory now. So you can get the name, you can get the code, you can get the suggested NKF and the subject all from memory. But if it doesn't create some memory space to keep it, how will you be able to pull those things out of memory, right? They're never there in the first place. How can you pull stuff out of a bag when you haven't created the bag, essentially, right? That's how that works. That's why you need to read them an array before you use it, otherwise it will throw an error. This is the same kind of concept here. That's why I like to redeem my arrays inside the constructor, right? It's just to avoid any problems. So the minute you make the class, it redeems the array. You don't have to worry about the order in which you redeem the array. It happens the minute you create the class, and that it's just safer for the people who use the class. I do see another question, I think. But I was never penalized for not making a constructor void. Even our lecturer never made it void unless I never noticed. Like I said, it depends on what you do in this course, right? So I'm considering I'm doing this UML as like similarly to how I do my honors stuff. So it might be slightly different to how you do it in this course. It's really important that before you try and do something different to your lecturers, you ask them if it's okay. As far as I know, as long as you can explain why you made it void, you should get the marks. In theory, some markers might be a little bit uptight about it, but essentially the rule for informatics is if you can explain yourself and it has been taught to you in class, you're more than welcome to use it, right? So that's the rule I was raised with in informatics, and I think that's the rule I'm going to teach you here and refer to. And if one of the assistants does tell you, look, you're not supposed to have it as void, then you can go and say, well, in the Saturday class they showed it as void. And I don't know if it should be as void in the course, but I'm going to do it just because that's what I think makes sense, because I think that a constructor doesn't return a value. Then they should not take away any marks. If they do, you can definitely query it with Mr. Cottrell and say, look, Mr. Cottrell or Mr. van der Westhuizen, I know that a constructor doesn't really return anything, so should I put the return type of constructor down in the UML? Does it matter whether I say it's void or does it matter whether I say it's not void? And they will give you a more definite answer, right? Right now, I can't answer to how they want you guys to go forward. I can only kind of tell you what I know about how to do UML, essentially, right? And remember, I'm just a student like you guys, essentially. Those guys are the lecturers. They are the real authorities in the course. So you should definitely always get their go ahead before doing something. But always use the correct channel. So if a marker tells you that they don't think you should be putting void, then you're welcome to query whether you should put void in, and then say, look, I think this marker tried to penalize me incorrectly here, after knowing for sure that that Mr. Cottrell doesn't mind if you put void in, right? So I think it's just important to really go the correct channel. All right, cool. So now you guys know what a constructor does. You know how to do a UML essentially. Why these things are different. Do any of you guys have a question with regard to UML? I know I spent a lot of time doing UML today, but I really think the design process is such an important process. Like for me in honors right now, the honors, the way I'm kind of doing design, it saves me hours and hours and hours in debugging, right? So that's really important. Was that a raised hand? Did somebody have a raised hand here? Yes, you may speak to me.
Okay, so I realized that for your property methods you are passing the what's this the type that you want. But for in this case, even if what we were taught is that you don't pass anything. So is it fine if in my UML I did it that way, and then when I code it, it's when then I pass it, like for instance,
Yeah.
the name, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's perfectly
Okay.
fine. So if your lecturer tells you, like if Mr. van Westhuizen or Mr. Cottrell says, property methods don't accept any parameters, right? Then you go with what they say. They are the experts in this field. I am literally just a student who's here to help you understand how to code. Right?
Okay, so
They always overrule me. Yeah.
Okay, so because I see that you had a parameter, but in this case we normally in the property method actually in coding we have it, but I see that you also included in the design. So I wanted to know that maybe the assistant won't penalize us or whatsoever if we didn't put it in the UML, but in the actual code we passed it, we had the parameter for it.
In my personal opinion, the more detailed your design is, the more likely it is that you're not going to make a mistake. It shows that you've planned what you're going to code, and in your head you have a clear idea of how to solve the problem, right? So ideally, the assistant should not penalize you for this. But
Okay.
again, I speak for myself as an assistant there. I don't know about
So
all of
you
the
as a
assistants.
as an assistant, say maybe if you marking the you mark my semester test or an exam, would you penalize me
Yes.
if I don't make my UML more specific? Would you penalize me? Or
If you made it more specific, no, I
no,
wouldn't.
if I don't make it more specific,
If you don't make it more specific,
yes, sir.
depends. So
Okay.
I'll probably ask Mr. Cottrell what kind of generalization he allowed.
Okay.
So how much of the stuff you could leave out. And if you leave out anything necessary, like for example, if you left out a constructor
Yes.
when you were supposed to show a constructor,
Yes.
that's when you would get penalized.
No,
But I don't think I'm gonna really penalize you for something that Mr. Cottrell allows you to do.
okay, sir.
So that's just the thing.
Okay, thank you, sir. Because I normally do my things parameterless. It can't parameterless, but coding it has parameters.
Okay.
But thank you, sir.
No problem. I'll definitely actually ask Mr. Cottrell about that, and then maybe I'll get him to discuss it with you guys next week, so that you guys can have a detailed direction to go in there.
Okay, thank you, sir.
No problem. All right, so that's it for UML. Does anybody else have any question for the UML before we start coding and trying to be really good at what we do and just making the code work? Please raise a hand. You're welcome to just let me know, or even type out a question. I'll give you about a minute. So, yes, what is your question?
Oh, one last thing, sir. So for the UML, so concerning the method, for the subject one, you're going to have the method. It's going to be the total NQF. Let me see. Oh yeah, you're going to have a total NQF level for the method in the subject, and then in the course, I had two methods: the NQF level and the code level. I don't know if that's correct.
The total level for the subjects. Let's take a look at your practical here, right? Here's what each subject should have, right? It says it has a name, it has a code, it has a number of NQF credits that it's worth, right? So I don't know if you can calculate a level based on the subject itself, because in my mind, a higher certificate has multiple subjects in, so the level is based on many subjects, right? So I wouldn't have the level being calculated in the subject. I would, on the other hand, have a level calculation on here. So I might go get level, right? And this will return an integer. You can also have one thing here called accuracy. So is correct, right?
Yes.
And this will validate whether the actual person who created this thing actually created it correctly, right? And this is going to be a Boolean.
Okay.
Right, so thank you for reminding me for those ones. That's where I put them. I put them in course instead of subject.
Okay. Well, yeah. Another reason why I wanted to put the subjects one is because in the question paper they said for each subject there's okay. Can you go to the question paper?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, in the question paper here they said inside the brackets in number one, but following the need okay. So here they say this is calculated by summing up the credits for each subject in the course. That's why I also put the method under the subject. I think the guideline was the each subject. Yeah.
Well, let's consider this, right? So it says your application must store and display the total number of NQF credits a course has, right? So you're calculating the total credits for a course by summing up credits for each subject, right? So what you're doing is you're going through each subject and you're adding the credits for that subject together, and then you're storing it in the course, right? That information is related to the course, because it says here, right? A course
Okay.
has, all right?
Oh,
So that's why you should put it in the course instead of in the subject. You are using information from the subject, but your calculation is essentially calculating something that's related to the course.
okay. I fully understand now. So thank you.
Right? So do you guys see how these kind of questions can be sorted out with design without you guys having to code first? Which is a really, really important thing, right? You're looking for your course code to be type string. They said alphanumerical. Do you know of a data type that is alphanumerical that's not string? Were you guys taught anything like that? Because I wasn't. I'm not being like sarcastic or anything. Like if you guys were taught a specific kind of string that does this, please let me know. But as far as I remember, string is the only thing that can be both character and number, right? They can have a set of characters and numbers. So that's why I use string. Does that kind of answer your question? Yes, okay, cool, that's great. All right, so now, so you guys see that a lot of your questions related to this practical could actually be solved by generating a good design and talking to an assistant or a tutor about the design, right? And I think that's really, really important to remember because design saves lives in software engineering, right? A good design can save you many hours of problems. It can save you many years of stress, and it can save a company a lot of money. All right, design saves lives. All right. If you guys do have any questions related to UML, like I know the gentleman was saying that here I have some parameters. A lot of people might leave these blank. If Mr. Cottrell says leave it blank, then you're more than welcome to leave it blank, right? I like to definitely specify what's going in and out of my class, but that's just me. You know, it's just the way I do things. Let's try and get to coding, shall we? If you guys do have any questions related to the UML that you do think of, please let me know. All right, what have I done so far? I just created a general UI. I haven't renamed anything. I'm lazy to rename stuff. But what I will do, hopefully you guys can see. If you guys can see, please let me know. If you can't see, please let me know. I'm hoping you guys can see. What is this? Why was that a problem? I don't know why that was highlighted. Oh well, let's do my options straight. Also, remember to put in your details, right? Putting in your details is really important. Always put your details at the top of the page, right? Option. Oh, I think somebody can't see or something. Let me just check. Please zoom in a little. All right, so I thought as much. All right, is that a bit better? Was that a bit better? Yes. Okay. Cool. Thank you. Thanks for letting me know. All right, so just you always have to put your data at the top of the thing. You student number, your name, what practical this is, right? So this is practical 5, if I remember. Right, so I'm just gonna do it in a single line. You guys should do the whole formatted string thing. It's really important that you guys always put that in there, right? So explicit is gonna be on info, gonna be all option scripts is gonna be on, right? You can always just label this and be like my option statements. And you can copy and paste this into every class that you create. Just gonna add a class, one for subjects and one for courses. Right? What is going on? References need to show. Just close those quickly. Alright, let's add a class and we shall call it courses, right? Because well, let's start with subject because we think that's the one that's the smallest here essentially, right? It's the smallest class. It's the one that's inside the course, so we should detail that one first at least. Right? We can add another class. And call this just to avoid confusion. All right, one of the things you must remember is that option statements go into every class just so that they know that you coded it with those specific rules, right? I think that's really important for everybody to remember. Let's start with the subject because it has the lowest amount of stuff. So local variables dash internal. Right. One of the things we needed was a private name. I'm going to go name with an underscore, right? That's to stop overshadowing. You'll see why last week I had a serious problem where we ended up calling function recursively because I skipped the underscore. If you know how to skip the underscore, you're welcome to skip the underscore. I think it's a real problem. But again, it's the way you think about it. Right? Ooh, that's definitely not a string. That's what I want to type there. Go private code typos. And this has a NQF, right? Integer, right? Then we need to drop down some property methods so that this is accessible for. I'm gonna skip a constructor here for now. You're more than welcome to just create a constructor. That's fine. It will call the default one on its own. That's because Visual Studio it thinks that everybody is an idiot, but you guys are not idiots, right? You guys are real smart software engineering people, and you guys are capable of creating your own constructors. You can show Visual Studio that. But I'm lazy, so I'm gonna let Visual Studio do it for me. I will now do some property methods here. The reason it's called a property methods is the reason they call property methods is because data can be referred to as internal properties of the class. Right? That's another synonym for this. So by calling it a property method, you're essentially saying this is how we'll access those properties of this class. Right? That's just a little bit of a cool view, I guess. You don't see anything. Does everybody see what I'm typing? When I type? Whoever had the hand up, please talk. Oh, so you see? So there's, I think maybe you can just leave and come back. So because a lot of people do seem to be seeing, so it could just be your connection. It could be an issue. Okay, cool. So I think everybody can see here. You just leave and come back. I'll try and wait a bit. So I'll just go talk to you about property methods, right? So everybody should know how to create a property method. Essentially what you're doing is you're trying to enable access to these things in a controlled manner, right? So the reason why you want to control these things is because there might be some functions that rely on this information, and it can't be negative here, or it can't be a double here, or it can't be empty, right? Otherwise it will break your subject. Now as the person responsible for this class, who you put your name at the top, you're responsible. You need to remember that if this breaks, it's going to be your fault, even if somebody else breaks it by using it incorrectly. Okay, so let's say you pass this on to your team member. Let's say team member or the other coder guy on your team, his name is Mark, and Mark takes your subject code and he decides he's going to integrate it into his system, but he doesn't do something correctly, and somehow the name ends up blank. And then when you try and display the subject name, it gives you these Chinese characters, right? That's essentially something that can happen, and it's because you didn't make your class safe enough. All right, I'm hoping that the person who left managed to come back and can see now. So I'm going to go on with the class now. Public, because you're trying to enable access out externally, right? Oh yeah, let's avoid that. Sorry about that. So in the get, we're gonna just return, right? And in here, we're going to just set it. Right, this is for property method. This one gets sets empty. We need one for code, right? So we're just gonna do one for code. All right, so that's name and code done. Then we have NQF, right? So NQF is integer. So let's go. I remember one comment per function at least, just so everybody knows what you're doing. If the function does anything weird and wacky, then you should definitely do this. Now, let's just look at the practical again and see where we're supposed to use the alphanumeric nonsense, right? So the course needs to have the 10 alphanumeric characters. But what we can do is, somebody had a question on validation, right? So I'm just going to talk about validation quickly, right? So we return the string because this should be valid. But when we're getting it, right? So we're going to say if value length equals 0, right? Then we're going to return what can we return? Oh, we'll return null. Where's null? Is that different? Is that from a different language? Yeah, we'll just return, right? That should allow us to. It should be the same thing, right? So what I'm doing here is I'm saying if the value is 0, just don't set it and leave. Right? This is actually bad. You should essentially set this to a to a default value, which is default name, which is going to be name is equal to my subject name. This way, even if somebody sends you an empty value, right? The name will still show up, and essentially that's a great way of doing this, right? It allows you to so it won't break anything. So if I refer to the name later on, or if I display the name again, it will have something to display, and the person will know, oh look, this this is not something I put in, so it's got to be incorrect, right? And you can have a comment here saying returns, set a default value if input is incorrect. Right? That's really important, right? So in your comment, you could tell whoever's going to use your class, oh, this actually does set a default value if something is wrong, right? You can do the same thing for everything. If you do validate one thing, validate everything. That's why do validation last, right? That's just a really important thing. It does consume time because sometimes you'll be validating some really stuff where you like here. You might have to check a bandwidth, right? You might have to check that somebody's not making one subject count 800 credits or something. That's a terrible kind of subject to have. So essentially, you wanna be able to validate things as accurately as possible. This is line 20. All right, let's go. Let's go to line 20. Line 20. If value.length is 0. Okay, so value is a string. Value is a string that will be set by the so the user is essentially going to set this value. It's going to go something along the lines of subject.name is equal to something, right? And then whatever you said it is equal to will be passed to this as a value. Now what I'm doing is I'm checking that whatever was passed is not a string with a length of 0, right? If it is a string with a length of 0, what I'm doing is I am setting a default subject to the internal name, right? And then if not, I'm just going to set the actual value to the name. So if it is not 0 length, then I'm going to set the actual name. So does that kind of clear up your question, hopefully? How do you validate using utility methods? That's a really cool question, actually. So let's do that quickly. Right. Validator, right? So what we're gonna have is private. This is utility method. Private private function string checker as boolean, right? So we're gonna return some answer. If, and we're gonna say, well, we need to know what we're checking, so it's gonna have to have a string in here. Right, so then what we're going to do here is we're going to say, well, if my string dot length equals, I don't know if it's equals, is it equals? So, doing all that. So, so if my string is equal to is so then we're going to return valid. Right? Then we can do another check and we can say, well, ideally this shouldn't be too long, so let's try and make sure that it's not greater than 10. Right? is greater than 10, right? Then we're going to also return is valid as it is. Now, essentially, the other thing that you can check for is if it contains any kind of random character. So, let's say, I don't think we really expected you guys to check for random characters. I don't think we taught you contains as yet. So you can go at and right, so that's a special character. So you can just check for a special character so that it shouldn't contain a special character. And then at the end, because it doesn't contain a special character, it's not above 10, it's not equal to 0, you can just say return true. Right? Return, so this is the validator function, right? It can validate the string. Right. And up here where I said if valued at length, essentially what I can say is what did I call it? String checker. And that's how you validate with a utility function. So let me explain what's happening here. Right, I've created a function that will take some string as a parameter or as an argument, depending on, I forgot the difference between those, to be honest. And essentially what's going to happen is I set an initial flag to false, and I say, well, if the length is 0, just return the flag. If the length is greater than 10, return the flag. If the string contains some character, then return the flag, right? Else we will return true, right? And then we know that this is actually valid, that the string is valid, right? So don't use this unless you've learned it. Yeah, that's how you do that. Does that kind of answer your question? Or do I have to explain that a little bit more? Is there any part of that that really confuses anybody? Anybody, hand up, or do you wanna just talk to me on your mic, or do you wanna type me a message? So the person who asked the question, does that help? I understand how you call the function, right? Is this a way of validating a string? Yes, it is a way of validating a string. I'm essentially making sure that the string is not empty and that it's not bigger than some number, that it doesn't cause a stack, or it doesn't cause a buffer overflow, right? Okay, so somebody says, I don't understand how you call the function. Let's take a look here, right? Up here is where I call the function. It's inside the property method. I called string checker. I sent it the value that we get here, and it checks the value for me. And if it comes back true, then ooh, this is weird. That's a good observation. It should be, if not, string checker, because remember, string checker returns true. String checker returns. Oh damn! I forgot the not. Yeah. Right. Here we go. So the reason I put this not in here is because when we returned a valid string here, right, we returned true. So if this is true, then if the valid string, we were essentially going to set it to the default. That's a terrible way of doing things, right? So what I said is, if it's not a valid string, then we will return it. We'll set this default value, and then we'll just return. This one here is just if it is valid, essentially. But yeah, so that's how I did that. So that's where I called it. The reason I can call it like this is because this is coming in from the user. When you say, for example, let's say you say subject x, subject x dot name equals input box, right? It's gonna do that, right? So you know what I'm talking about there. What you're doing is you're calling this side of the function, right? And you're giving it the stuff that's on here, right? So everything that's after this comes in as value, and then we're checking it here, right? Does that make sense a bit? How would you make a user re-enter until they enter a valid data? Quite simple, all right? Quite simple. So what we're going to do here is we're going to say what you should do. So for repeat, in the form, I haven't done any actual form code yet, so I don't know where we're going to do the inputs, right? Let's assume input is done here, right? For some reason, I'm going to have a for loop, right? I'm going to need a global variable yet called all right. Let's just see. So here I'm going to be getting the information for each subject, right? So here we'll get some information for, let's say, get course stuff, right? So essentially what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say, well, initially I'm going to say, so I need to click those arrays quickly here. Let's go click those arrays. Course. Right. So in here we're going to say, well, course. I think I'll put it in course. Quickly add that quickly. Yeah. Subject here. I'm just going to make this. Right, just for this example here. There's a terrible thing to do. Don't ever do that. That's bad. Right, subjects. What the name it is? It is subjects. All right. Essentially, let's imagine that this subject works. This is not probably going to work right now, right? Course. Let's just do it in a comment. Right. So you're gonna have course dot course dot subject y dot name equals to input box. And give name, right? And essentially what we can do here is we can now check this. We can say if course x dot subject y dot name not equal to, where I make the default here, default is my subject name. Right, so if it's not equal to this, then we know it's valid. Then it is valid. And then say this is pseudocode now. Or basic steps, right? Else what we will do is we will say x plus, right? or x minus minus. Well, let's let's x minus 1. Right there, that's what we're doing. So what we're doing is we're saying repeat, right? And just repeat asking it again and again, because it should be give name for subjects, and it should be plus C string X courses. Alright, so then you should get space here. And then you should say and subjects. Y. That's essentially how you'll do it. Does that make sense to people here? Does this make sense to the person who asked? Yes, no, maybe. I just going over this again. What's happening is I'm saying if the subject, if it doesn't set it to the default name, then we know it is valid. If not, we're just gonna decrease x by 1, right? And essentially the loop will run forever until the person gets the correct thing. It makes sense. All right, so I'm hoping that explained a little bit. This is a bit more advanced stuff, so unless specifically required for the next practical, you shouldn't specifically worry about it. But yeah, so that's essentially how you can do that. You just decrease the counter on the for loop, so that the for loop runs forever essentially, in as long as that statement is true. Right? Make sure that there's an if statement checking the validity. Obviously, if you just have minus minus in the for loop. All right. Sure. I haven't even done courses yet. I think I'm done with subjects though, right? Yeah, I should be done with subjects. Let's go do courses quickly. What am I gonna do actually? Actually, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna copy this. I think I'm gonna copy this. I think I'm gonna copy this. I think it's gonna be easy to copy this. And what we're gonna change is we're gonna change this, and we're gonna say this is suggested. Okay. And here we'll have property suggested, and otherwise it will return suggested in here. Or it'll set a suggested. Okay. The string checker, this is checking for alphanumerics. It's got a max length of 10. So if it's a max length of 10, we check for 11, right? Yeah, I'm gonna unlock. Oh my god, what is wrong with my unlock? It is 11. Alright, so it has to be not 0 and it has to be less than 11, right? That's essentially how we do that. Actually, we can say 10 actually. Yeah. And that's because if it is 10, this won't return true. Alright, so what we've done here is now we've got the basics, names, code, subject, suggested NQF. Oh yes, and the one that we needed to actually validate was not name, it was code. It was code, it was code, it was code. And we'll do this, we'll go here, code, value. No, that's done, now we validate code. That's why utility functions are so cool. Right, you can validate any string of them. Alright, does anybody have any questions on what I've done so far? I've just copied and pasted some basic stuff that I explained in subject. So you should be up to date, right? You should essentially be up to date. Then the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna say private subjects and subject. Right? Now we've created a subject array. So let's make a property method for subjects. Property method for subjects array. Public property subjects. I think there's questions. I'm going to check it. Is the code meant to have more than or less than 10? I noticed your length is greater than 10. Ooh, okay, that's a pretty good question, right? Yeah, if it is greater than 10, right? Yeah, so essentially what I'm doing in my validator, right? What I'm saying is if the length of the thing is greater than 10, return is valid, right? Which means that it's false. Right? So valid is false. So I know that's a bit weird to wrap your head around, but essentially what I'm saying is, so essentially this is, it is invalid, and the flag is valid is false, so just return, right? I think that's what I'm trying to do here, right? So it is false here. We set it to false here, okay? So we can just return it because the valid, it'll tell us that it's not valid, right? Does that make sense to you? A little bit? Please let me know. Otherwise, I'll repeat. Okay, cool. So I don't understand why property methods have parameters. Huh, all right. Well, that's a really interesting one because I didn't understand when I started coding either, right? So I had to ask, and essentially, what this does, right? So how come I can have index here, and it still has a value as a subject here, right? How did that work out, right? But here as NQF, I needed it as integer. Well, cool thing to remember is I can actually go like that, right? And it'll still work. I do this, I give you this code here when I type it here, so that you know what's happening, because this is done by default inside Visual Studio. This value is set by Visual Studio. That's why I don't need to set to do another one here. All right? Does that make sense? Does that make sense? Like I said here, right? When you say subject x.name, well, now I have to change this to course. This doesn't make sense. Right, so course x.name. When you say course x.name is equal to input box and you get the name from the user, right? It's essentially where this value comes from here. So I don't need to really put my name as string there. I'm hoping that clears things up a little bit for you, a little bit. Yeah, so you can definitely ask Mr. Cottrell and Mr. Vanavessezen that question, because that's something I also didn't understand, so maybe I'm not explaining it as correctly as I should be. It's definitely not an answer. My answer is definitely not the one you should put in your exam, because I'm a bit iffy on that one. But I essentially understand, in my understanding, that because this value here is something that you can assign using the equals sign, so it works based on the equals operator also. So that's why that's such a cool thing to use. Right. So I did explain the validator. I was supposed to set the subject. So yeah, so right. There the subject array thing is set. We've got our validation done. What else was left to do? Now we have to do those functions. Let's look at our UML quickly, and then we'll see what else we have to do here. All right, so we've got the constructor. We forgot the constructor. How careless of us. All right, so we need to do a constructor. We've got property for name, we've got property for code, we've got property for suggested income, or property for subject, right? So we need to do course and these three here, right? So let's quickly get those done. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to show you guys any output today. I'm already nearly at my time limit, but I will try and I'll go over time a bit and see if we can get that done quickly. All right. If you guys need a small break, let me know because it can be a bit rough. But I mean, this will be in a video, so you're more than welcome to take a small break and then just watch the video again afterwards. It is still recording, right? Let's just check. Yeah, it is still recording. All right. So now that we've done that, we need to have a constructor. Let's put it right at the top here, so that we know exactly what we're going to be doing. Right. So constructor. Right, and then I'm going to say public new network public sub new. That worked. Right. Sub new. The reason, so any function has some return type, any subroutine has no return type, so you can make any subroutine void in your UML. That's just something I wanted to let you know about. You can just leave it out also if you're more comfortable leaving it out, right? Here we read them, right? Nice. Something that you don't need access to is make the code more readable. We'll do this. Nice. There we go. Now we're done our constructor. Now we need to do the total function, right? I'm gonna do this at the bottom. We're gonna call this calculates actual into FF, right? It's gonna be a public function calculates F, and it's gonna return a integer. Oh yeah, this is has that's what's missing there. So we're just gonna them a total as integer. We're gonna go for x integer equals 1 to subjects. I'll answer your question now. Let me just not lose this train of thought. Total equals subjects. Some of you. All right. So Actually, you guys caught me out with that one. Can you please explain why two of your variables are type subjects? Well, why two of my variables are type subject? All right, let's go take a look at that. I didn't see that. There's only one here. Oh, public subject or something. That was an old. That's for when I was doing the thing in the main and didn't even work. Don't worry about that. What we did realize is that some of this is actually wrong. So we need to kill that quickly. Alright, that's done. And of course, we kill the same stuff. So you guys did catch me out there. I didn't fully understand that. Nicely done. But hopefully now you understand a little bit, and that from the fact that I was wrong. Right. This one here we need. As with that. Now there, we fixed that thing there. And we're going to return total. Right, there we go. This one does the function. Calculates the actual NQF. Right. Credit total. Oh, we need one that calculates the level, right? So let's just do that one. Calculates NQF level. So let's remember this, right? So NQF level was dependent on the total. If it was above 120 to 360, it was level 5, and then I think it went up in groups of 120. So this is going to be a select case kind of function in my head. So let's just do that quickly. The function is going to be called level, right? And it's going to be void, and it's going to also return an integer. Right? Level as integer. And then what we're going to do is we're going to say dem total creds and integer. Let's say total creds equal to calculate NQF. So now we've got the total NQF level. I'm going to say switch total creds. Right at place. Is it a switch dependency in Visual Basic, or is it a select? It's select case. Yeah, select case. That's the correct one. Switch is Java. All calculations must be done by you, not built-in functions. Please explain this. Oh, so essentially you have to manually do a for loop. You have to manually do the calculation. I have to see your code and understand how you do a calculation. So for example, with me, right, with this total, let's assume that I had the Visual Basic could calculate the total by just me going array.total, right? I think you can actually do that, but don't do that, right? So essentially what you would do there is you would, some people would just go subjects.nqf.total, and then instead of doing this whole for loop and returning the total, right? So we want to see that you actually know how to calculate the total, not that you know how to do fancy smancy stuff, right? What is the case gonna be? Case is gonna be one greater than 120. Okay, let's just do if statements. I'm tired of select case now. It's gonna be too much work. Sorry, is there another question? Oh, okay, thanks. Okay, cool. As long as you understand what's going on there. Right, so we're gonna go if, right, and then in here it's gonna be if total creds you don't need these in Visual Studio, I keep forgetting. Total cred is greater than, I think it was 120. If, I think we should actually do else. Thanks, that's if it's greater than 120, then we're going to display return, so return 5, yeah, else if so cred is lower than, I think it's 360. Here it's in, yeah, okay, wait, if it's greater than 360, so cred is greater than 360. Guys, I hope that doesn't confuse you too much. Return 6. Oh no, this is not gonna work. This is not gonna work. Let's take out this return 5 here. This is the way that should be. Alright. If it's greater than 360, if total cred is smaller than 360, and so if it's between 120 and 360, return 5. Else. Right? So let's go look at the question paper and we'll see what we've got going here. Question paper is if it's above 120 to 360, you return 6, else you return 7. It's greater than that, you just return 7. Okay, so let's just say it's greater than 360. If it's greater than 360 but between 480, right? If it's less than 480. Or 80, and if 6 and 7. Now this is very sloppy code. Some code like this ever in your life. If you do, I will be very angry at you, even though you've seen it come from me. Right? Right. So I should not return it. Returning level. I would return 0. That means something went wrong, right? Because essentially what we're saying is, right, if it's greater than 120, go into this if. If it is below 360, return 5. Else, if it's below 480, return 6. And if it's not less than 480, return 7. Right, that should work. Because it should be bigger than, it should be greater than 360 and greater than 480 for it to return 7. Is it 480 that the last one is? Let's make sure of that. If it's less than 480, you return 7. There we go. So if it's less than 480, you return 7. F is less than 360. Wait, I think I confused myself here. So if it's greater than 360, we return 6. If it's greater than 480, we return 7. If it's greater than 120, we return 5. That's what that says. That's literally what that says. So let's look at this. If it is greater than 120, right, then we can return 5 if it is less than 360, or if it's not less than 360, we will return 6 if it's less than 480, and 7 if it's not less than 480. I'm sure this will work. We don't include the values. What do you mean? What do you mean we don't include the values? Oh, you're talking about inclusivity in the if statement. We can just do this. That should be fine. Right, that should do it. Well, actually, no. Look, because I'm using greater than here, it is included, right? So if let's say total creds was 360, right? What's gonna happen is gonna say if total creds is greater than 120, it is greater than 120. Well, if total creds is actually smaller than 361, then we're gonna return 5. Okay. Then if total creds is smaller, so then once you return 5, you jump out of that, right? Because 360 is below. But if it's not, let's say it was 480, right? So we're going to say, well, if it's greater than 120, it is greater than 120. Is it is it less than 360? No, it's not. It is actually greater than, it is not greater than 480, we're going to return 7. It's not less than 480, we're going to return 7. There we go. So that's how that if statement will work. And it should work. It should work. It should work. What else did we have to do in our UML? Let's look at our UML. The UML said that we have to do is correct, right? So is correct is a pretty simple one. It's gonna be like this. Is the suggested NPF level the same as calculated? Right? Well, that's just gonna be public NQF. Check was public function NQF. Check. And it will return a boolean has the word there as is valid as boolean if suggested NQF equals to calculate NQF. I think it's actually get level here. Then set it to false at the beginning to cover all bases. And that's that done. So I don't know if I'm gonna get time to. You guys wanna stay here and do output with me, or do you guys believe that my code works and you just want to try do the output yourself? Oh wait, I forgot something. There's something missing here. There's something missing in the constructor. All right, let's see what the people say. Stay with you if time permits. Please do it. All right, cool. So I'm gonna try and do some output with you guys. Do you guys understand so far? Please ask me any questions because I know I just did a lot of stuff, right? So if you have lost you anywhere, please stop me. I'm more than willing to spend another like 5-10 minutes explaining to you whatever it is that you might be missing out on. Because it's important that you understand this for the following practicals as well as for semesters. Right, so is there anything that you don't understand? Please shoot your question now. You're welcome to just put your hand up or just type me a question. Why doesn't the subject you just called have parenthesis? I just called. Where did I just call a subject? Oh, in the constructor here. Why doesn't it have parenthesis? Because this is the default constructor. So I can do this. It's not going to make it wrong. It's just because it's default, I don't need to include those. So essentially, think about it like this, right? Visual Studio created that one for me, so I don't need to add the parentheses if I don't want to. It still knows what I'm talking about. The parameter list differentiates between the non-default constructor and the one that you create, right? Yeah. All right, cool. I'm hoping that helped you out a little bit. Anybody else have any other questions before we try and do some? Nobody? None at all? You guys sure? Because that was the main point of the practical. I mean, you guys have done input and output for these things many times in your life. You know how that works. But just a key concept here that I saw a lot of people struggling with is calling functions outside of the class, right? So I'm bringing your attention directly to it this time, right? And I'm saying, well, look, for me in the calculate NQF, right? I am saying subjects.NQF, right? But NQF is actually a property method, right? But if this was a calculated NQF, right? Let's say I gave it credits, and it gave me some level here by calculation. This is the same way I can call get level, right? And you see that happening here where I just say get level. And the reason I don't have to have this dot get level here, you'll learn about this soon. But the reason I don't have to have this dot get level here is because it knows I'm talking about this function called get level. When I want to call get level outside of the class, I'm just gonna say course x dot get level, and it's gonna give me the level of course x, right? Because that's how we've established this code to work. That's something I just wanted to bring to your attention and to everybody's attention. Is there any other questions before I try and do some output here? Yes, no, maybe, kind of. You may raise your hand if there's anything. Well understood, but how does the dot contain work? Okay, dot contain is something I should not have shown you guys, to be honest. The dot contain is it's a string function that uses something called that uses the string wrapper interface, and you shouldn't use that at your current level of coding. You don't have the necessary skills to use dot contains. And I don't mean that in a condescending manner. I'm just saying we're not going to assume that you have the skills. We're going to want to see that you can loop through the string, look for this character, right? We want like the same way you create a total. We want to see that you actually don't use. This is called a system dependence, right? So I'm using something that the system implements. I don't know how this works in the back end, right? It could be using pivot sort or bubble sort or something like that. And I have no idea what kind of sort it will use, what kind of search algorithm it uses, whether it uses a binary search, anything like that, right? So whether it sorts the string and then tries to check which ASCII character fits here. I don't know whether it does that. I don't know whether it does a binary search where it jumps into the middle of the string and it says, is this character A and the B or whatever the case might be, right? So I don't know what it does in the background. I don't know what the code that actually finds whether whether the string has an at in it, works. So you should not use stuff that you don't understand, right? You should not use stuff that you don't understand. Okay. In ComSci 3, they'll probably teach you how this works. ComSci 3A, they'll probably teach you how this works. And if you're lucky, Infos 2. Depends on how Mr. Labia feels. Okay, thanks. Yeah, so don't use that. Don't use that. Just search through the string on your own and figure out if it does contain something, right? So literally go through each character on the string and then try and look for an at character or a hash character, or whatever the case might be, right? You're welcome to do that. All right, so let's go do some outputs. Not gonna lie, I am a bit tired. That was a lot of thinking. But let's go do some. Everybody gets tired of doing these practicals. Yeah, so let's go get some stuff done here. So first we need to get the number of subjects and the number of courses. There was a bonus section in this practical. I'm not going to show you how to do the bonus section. For those who want to know, I'm just going to tell you how to kind of do it. It's essentially you have the number of subjects, like I did here, right? I've got number of subjects in here, right? Essentially, you would then allow the user to give you a number of subjects per course. So at the top here, at the top of your form, you're not going to have a number of subjects like I did here. You're going to dim a number of subjects and you're going to get a single number of subjects for every single course. The only one you'll have at the top here is the number of courses. Right? Does that kind of make sense? Does everybody kind of understand how to do the bonus for next time? All right, cool. Let's go do some homework now. Oh yes, something I must emphasize that I have to emphasize. Did you guys notice that I did all my calculations in course because they were related to course, right? You never ever do any calculations in form anymore. Form is just for your user interface. It talks to your user only. It does not do calculations. Calculations are done in the classes. The form needs to only deal with UI. So it takes information in and gives output out, right? That is all the form is allowed to do. From now on, if you do a calculation in the form, we will be taking away heavy marks. As you saw in the last week's practical, there's actually a section that says you have to use the class to calculate stuff, right? You have to use the class to do a calculation it's on the mark sheet. If you do that, we cannot give you marks for the calculation. And then you've done such beautiful code, but now you're not getting marks because you didn't read the instructions or you didn't understand the concept of a class, right? So please make sure that you 100% do not do any calculations in your form. Okay, if there's one thing everybody learns from this video today, it's just don't do any calculations in the form. Okay, all calculations must be in a class. And did everybody get that? Just to make sure, did everybody get that? Why we don't put calculations in the form? Now that you've learned classes and you've graduated to classes. No? Don't know. Oh, understood. Cool. As long as you guys understand, let's go back to the form and do some stuff now. So what I said was in subjects and courses. Right, this is gonna be in subjects equal to C. Here's the number of subjects. Right. I'm just gonna clear this. not 100% nonsense, but oh, actually, let's just do course stuff here. For YS. So, did I read them? Did I read them? No, I didn't. Let's read them. Next, I'm gonna say courses. Yeah. And here, what we're gonna do is end subjects, and that should do it. So this is, it says the array. Here's the constructor. And right, there we go. So that's the redumbing done there. Let's do the course stuff here. So we're gonna have courses y name what is the name for course C string y question mark. Right, then we're gonna do codes. What is the name of the course? So we'll just change this to code. And in here we're gonna say course. But here we can also actually add the name, which is something that you should be able to do now. I'm gonna say courses by name, right? The reason I'm showing you this is because you can then use that information to validate, like I showed you earlier. For the name, you can validate the code. Validate name, then you can validate code. So code is the one thing that you did really have to validate for the course. So we're just going to do that quickly. Are you done with the instantiation in the form, or are you still going to instantiate the subject? Oh, that's a really good question, right? So courses are subject objects equals new subject. Well, if you think about it, right? When I in here, when I've instantiated when I've made a box for the course, right? When I decided how to define a box for the course, right? What I did do was I already told it to make a box for each subject. So why would I have to tell it to make a box twice? Right? That's a good question, right? Why you don't repeat code? We're good software engineers here. So in your constructor for course, I've already created space for the subjects, so you don't need to do it again. Right? Does that make sense? And now we needed to check. We need to validate courses code, right? So courses y.code. I see. This makes sense. Cool. Thank you. So now we need to validate if this was correct, right? So if course y code equals to I think it was, let's check it out. Let's go check it out. In course, the string checker uses my subject name. I'm just gonna copy that. No, that's the default string. So then code runs valid. If the code is invalid, what we're gonna do is we're gonna say y equals to y minus 1, right? We try. Now, why will this work, right? Because we set up a property method that allows us to reset name, reset code for as many times as we want, essentially, right? So because of that, even if this is the first time I set it and I get it wrong, by going backwards, I just set the same one to a different input box string, and I check if it is valid, and then I retry, right? And I continually do this over and over and over and over and over again, right? So that's really important. But always do this check right at the bottom, otherwise you're going to mess up the stuff you've done. That's the order in which you do that code is really important because you're changing y. Understand? So if you change y, you might end up setting the previous course's stuff to other things, and that's not ideal, right? So just be very careful with how you do that. So what else do we have here? We've got suggested in here. That's something weird. And I'm just gonna copy this because I am too lazy to type. V, what is the number of courses? We'll change it to what is suggested NQF for that's class and courses Y. Yeah, there we've got that name code and it's just NQF. Now what we need to do is for each subject we need to get the subject. For each course we need to get the subject stuff, right? That's really important. And remember I told you this check here needs to only be done at the bottom, so you're retrying for the whole subject. What this does is it retries every single thing for the subject. It doesn't just retry the code. And if you want to just retry the code, that's a little bit more complicated. Okay, and the best way to probably do that is probably a try catch. Right, a try catch in a for loop. Or just put a while loop around code and say while courses.code equals to this, just keep retrying and asking for code, right? That's a way to do it. But this is just in case you made a mistake with any of these. You can have that input at the end there, but above it you still need to have this. The reason behind that is because course actually should delete course up here. How did I make it? Where anyway, going on live. Courses dot y is the one that goes to course and subject dot x. Why am I? This is not a member of course, right? So let's look at our course and see how we declared subjects. Right? Let's look at subjects. We declared my subject. So let's go and just tweak our code a little bit over here. Alright. And And the red line disappears and done, right? So we don't need to do the validation for this, but we do need to do courses dot the code for courses, right? So it's courses y dot my subjects dot code. Well, sorry, 1 second. Just need to use sorry about that. My mom came and started. Happens to us all, right? It happens to us all. I am going to copy this because I'm too busy to type. Give me code. Alright, excuse my English in those questions. That's not the best, and I don't expect you all to think it's great. But it gets the question asked, and that's important. So now we've got the course name, code, and the NQF credits for the subject are necessary, right? So let's just put like that. Thank you. All right, give the NQF course X and subject Y. We're going to put the course name here and the subject name here. Make it fancy, it's up to you, right? Oh, that's good. Right, cool. So we've got the 3 stuff for subject, we've got the 3 things for course, and we've got the 4th thing for course, which is the 3 things for subject. Alright, cool. If course to code, retry, that's fine. So now we've got all of the input, right? Does anybody think that there's any input missing? Does anybody not understand how I got those inputs? Anybody? No? Yes? Maybe? All understood? Oh, good. That's great. All right, cool. In that case, now that you guys know how to do it, is there anything specific you want me to do? Because we've already gone 30 minutes over. So, yes? Is there a question? I did hear somebody unmute their mic and then they spoke to me and I thought it was a question. Was it not a question? Oh no, that wasn't the right thing. Are you guys not don't want to talk to me anymore about that? Alright, so no questions, I guess. I'm just gonna assume that there's no questions. If there's nothing specific, is there anything specific that you want to see me do right now, or can we call it quits for today? Yes, please talk to me.
Okay, so sir, why did you do y is close to y minus 1?
Now, where did you see the -1?
I think on the form.
Yeah.
Yes.
So why?
Yeah, on line
38. Oh,
yes,
why did I do this? Yeah,
yes,
okay, why did I do the y equals y minus 1? Alright,
yes,
so essentially what I'm saying is, let's say you go through your course, let's say course y is the course number 5, right? So course number 5, we get the name, we get the code, we get the suggested NQF value, we get some subject name, we get some code for it, we get some NQF for all of the codes, right? I mean, for all of the
yes,
subjects here in it, right? But
yes,
then we realized that code was invalid because we know that it's actually been set to my subject name, which is something in the course that we've established under the string validator, right? So if we look at the string validator, If the string validator, where did I put it now? Here. So if the string is invalid, then we set it to this by default. You understand? So in the
Okay.
form, I can check for this default string, and then I know that the user gave me incorrect input for this. If the user gave me incorrect input, what I'll do is I'll just take away 1 from the y and make him give me all of this stuff all over again. Right?
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, so if you wanted
Okay.
to just target the code, you could just put this in a while loop. In a while loop, while this is equal to that, right? Then you could just continuously ask until the code was no longer this.
Oh, okay. Okay. I understand.
Right, but in case you make a mistake on any of these, it's easy for you to just put the wrong thing into code, and then you'll be able to redo this.
Okay, sir. Can you please execute the code, sir, so I can see how it works after you're
Okay,
done?
I don't have any output here, so I'm just gonna run it quick, and then you can take a look. So when I click button 1, it asks me for number of subjects number 2, number of courses number 3. And button 2 is gonna ask me what is the name for course 1, and we'll call it BSCIT. What is the code for BSCIT course 1? There's supposed to be a space there, as you can see. We'll call it ITX80, right? 90. What is the suggested NQF for that? It's actually 7, I think. What is the name for course 1, subject 1, right? So course 1's subject 1. We'll call it ComSci. Right? What is the code? It's just going to be CSC01. What is the NQF for that? We'll just make it 120. What is the name for course 2, subject 1? We'll call it informatics. Info1. Well, it should be IFM1 B1, right? Now, what is the NQF for course 2 and subject 1? Now, this I said the recommended was a level 6, but I'm gonna make this a level 5. Right, so that's gonna be 240, and it's going to be level 5, but not above 360, so it's gonna be level 6. Right, what is the name for course 2? We'll call this BSc Math, right? Let's do the hated one. What is the code for? It's going to be MAT01X, right? What is the suggested NQF? This is also going to be 7, 6 or 7. We'll just put 7. Maybe it's honors. Name for course 1, subject 1, we'll just get Math Douglas. That's what they start everybody with, right? So give code for it's going to be MAT01A1. What is the NQF level? It's going to be 120. First check course. Oh, what happened there? That it's going to be a first check course. 120. Then what else do we have here? We can have what is the name for course 2, subject 2. What else do they do? They do, I don't know, stats. And stats is a thing. Stats 1A1. Well, it's 120. Let's put this one 3. What's the name for course 3? Damn, I don't know. I put 3 courses in here. Then I put 2 courses and 3 subjects. Oh no, there's 3 courses and 2 subjects. All right. Course 3 is gonna be biology. That's not really a course, I know, but hey. So 1 it's just in here. I'm a master's in biology this time around. I even have a 9. That's going to be invalid. That should be invalid. Anyway, whatevs. Give the name for course 1 and subject 3. So for course 1, I don't know why it's still saying course 1 there. That's a problem. It is a problem. What if I swap them around? Course 1, subject 3. They're not going to see anything there because we haven't programmed it to do any output. But yeah, so essentially that's but this does work. As you can see, it pulls in all of the data. Is there anything you really want to see me do with this practical? Because I think I should stop now. We're essentially 50. We're nearly an hour over. We're nearly an hour over time, guys. Is there anything that you guys really want to see me? You guys really want to talk about? Is there anything you guys really don't understand that you need a quick example of? Giving the names for each subject. All right, sure. Let's do a quick. What do you mean by that? So you wanna like label the grid with the names? Yes. All right. So you wanna label the grid with the names? All right. Let's take a look at let's. I'm not gonna do a grid labeling thing. I'm just gonna do a simple show message. The reason being, I don't have the brain power right now to continue this and just label the grid. This was pretty draining. So let's just do a simple output here where we'll give all of the names, right? So we'll give all of the names along with all of their NQ suggested NQF levels and the calculated. What is the main reason for failing to call a function on a class in a form? I don't know what you mean by that. Could you please unmute your mic and try and explain that to me? Or even if you type and try and explain it to me, I'll wait for you. All right, while you're busy trying to explain that, I'm going to continue trying to explain how to do the getting of all of the names and the calculated NQF. So I'm going to give the suggested NQF, the calculated NQF, and I'm going to give the and the name, right? So how does that sound? That sounds like you'll see me call a function in here. You'll see me call a property, and you will see me use the name as a display thing, right? That sounds like a fun plan, doesn't it? Actually, all I need is the Y one, so we're gonna go for Y as integer equals 1 to n courses. Next, Y, what we're gonna do is we're gonna say show message. As a message box. Message box. Alright, so what we're gonna put in here is we're gonna put in, it's gonna be the name is, and we're gonna say plus course Y, right? And then we're gonna say, well, some course Y courses. Right? And then course is y dot name. And I should clear that up, and then it should be the suggested is in courses find dot suggested MQF plus I'm going to say the calculated MQF is C string. That's not the correct thing. C string versus y. Actually, it's not that. It should be calculated. It should get level, shouldn't it? It should get level, yes. Get level. Here's one of this thing. Right, that's one for C string. Should be one for the over there because we've got box. What's wrong here? From string to double. What? I have no idea why it's trying to convert to double, so I'm just gonna delete that and just retry it, right? So okay, so I'm gonna go message box. Right. Inside the message box, we wanna have some strings, right? So it's gonna be first we have us courses dot name, right? And courses y dot name, right? That's a string. And we'll have some space. Just put comma there, and we'll go. That's courses y dot MQF, right? MQF suggested MQF. Thank God I spelled suggested so badly and nobody told me. Alright, that should still work. And then we've got another break here, and then we're going to put a recommended version. The calculated version, right? So instead of causing ourselves problems, we'll go that and then say level, right? And that worked. Right, now we've got, so it's going to be name, then suggested NQF, then get level, and then what we'll do is we'll even say what else is there that's important? Let's go. I think there was a question. Let's go see. So what does VBCRLF do? I have absolutely no idea. Let's do a quick Google. Maybe I can interpret for you. VBAs of carriage return. Oh, okay. So that's just when you're formatting a string. So I use environment.newline, right? Did you guys remember that? So a CRLF means carriage return, probably next line or something like that, right? Or line feed. So it's VB carriage return line feed, right? What it does is it sends it to the next line. It's a word that comes from when people had a typewriter. The carriage was what would actually print letters onto the page. So when you did a carriage return, you put it back to its starting point on the left side of the paper, and then the line feed is essentially allowing you to start typing again. Does that make sense now? Okay, cool. Back to random nonsense stuff here where we are now. Now what else did I do in courses that was cool? Okay, so we got we got an is valid here. So what we want to do is we want to try and if it's valid, right? So we're going to try and display whether it's valid or not. So we'll just say updates, and here we will say C string courses y dot is valid. And so is valid. Oh, it's NQF check. That's what I wanted to do. Is valid is not a real thing. NQF check. There we go. Alright, we should be able to see some magic now. Alright, let's start this up. I'm only going to do one course and 2 subjects. I am way too tired to type in something like that. So what is the number of subjects? We have 2 subjects. The number of courses? 1. Right. And what is the name for course 1? We'll call it ESCIT. What's the code? ESCIT01 1X. What is the suggested? Let's look at the practical. Let's just do this properly, everything at one time. Might as well do it properly, right? Suggested. It's going to be a bachelor's, which is 7. Bachelor's is 7, 7, 7, 7, 7. What is the name for course 1? It's CSC01. This is the name. So science. What is the code? It's CSC01. What is the NK level? So I said it was 4. So this needs to be 480. 480 divided by 2 is 240. So let's make it incorrect. So let's make it 230, right? So give the name for course 2. Informatics. I'll give the code for course 2, subject 1. This is supposed to be this is the other way around. So clearly it's supposed to be course 1, subject 2. I think I swapped them around. So the code would be FM1 P1. What is the NQF? It's also going to be 230, right? 230. Button 3 should give me a nice long string. So it's BSc IT. The suggested NQF is 7. The calculated is 6, and it needs an update, and it's apparently false. I wonder why that happened. Oh, because I modeled it as an is. Okay, so let me explain what happened there. All right. So in my courses for is valid, right? If I put this as true, if it was valid. So if it was valid, I put this as true. While in my form, what I said was, If it needs an update, it should be true, right? So I should actually say up to date here, right? And that's done. It works. Everything works. You guys saw that it calculated 6 when I gave it 230 and 230, which was actually 460, which is less than 480, right? Less than 480 on this here is actually level 6, so the calculated one was correct. It pulled the suggested one correctly. So you saw that this call worked out. The whole calculate get level, right? This here, it did work. Right? So does anybody have any questions with regards to this before we go offline? Does anybody have any questions regarding this? Now that you've seen it work, you've seen me calculate the actual level of the thing and tell you whether it needs to be updated. Please say it again. What do you mean? Please say what again? To those who want to leave, you're welcome to leave if you have no further questions or you don't really going to learn anything from this now. But to the person who wanted me to say it again, what would you like me to say again? Oh, the up to date, right? Okay, let me explain that quickly. So here, right, the reason why this needs to be up to date is because all I'm doing is I'm doing an NQF check, right? But in the course, when I look at how I do the NQF check, what I'm saying is if the suggested level is the actual level, then I'm setting it to true, right? Because what I'm saying is the suggested level, this is the question I'm supposed to, is the suggested level the same as calculated, right? And this gives a true if they're the same, but false if they're different, right? So in the form, if it's up to date, this should return a true because they are the same. But if it's not up to date, it should return false because they are different, right? And that's what the code does here. Does that make sense? Does that make a bit of sense? Okay, cool. So obviously I'm not going to do the grid stuff. I think I've done enough to show you that the functions do work. I've shown you how to call a function in a class, showing you how to access properties in the form, like the class properties in the form. We've also shown you how to do basic composition, right? And I've shown you how to do UML. I've shown you how to read the question. Is there anything else that I can do before I go and have my breakfast? Any last questions? None. Oh, that's great. That means you guys understand everything. So I'm hoping all of you get 100% next week. Do your best. Please use the resources available to you. Use the assistance lab that's online. Speak to your lecturers if you really have a problem. And enjoy the rest of your weekends. Bye, guys.